Hello everyone and welcome to another Peebo video series video. The reason this one's a Peebo video series video is because it's related to winter vacation. So if you watch my winter vacation videos in the past, you'll see my explanation why I take winter vacations. So this is part of my winter vacation fun, and part of having a winter vacation is to do indoor things, because outdoors it's really cold, and if you don't like the cold and you don't go out there too much, so a lot of my winter vacation is some outside, but some of it's inside. So this is a very exciting package. Comes from San Lorenzo, California. I bought it on eBay and I just received it in the mail, and I'm about to unbox it and talk about it a little bit, and this should be a two-part series video, and we'll just open her up, do an unboxing, and we'll see what's in here. What's in the box? Get this out. Well packaged. Oh, that's very nice. That's an AC cord, it's obvious. This over there. Not sure how that's going to work. Sure you can see what's there already. Oh, it's pretty exciting. Pretty nice. It's a heavy little thing. Styrofoam. Try to turn it around this way, I guess. It's looking pretty nice. They're loose in there. Hopefully they survived. So I'm not sure they're supposed to be, but anyway. Need some tools, I think. But what you're looking at is what you call a DynaKit Stereo 35. So it is a nice vintage tube amplifier. So it comes from apparently September 1966. So it's 48 years old. And it's a beautiful little vintage amplifier. And I'll show you a little more close and talk about it as I open it up. So basically what you're looking at here is the inputs for the front of the amplifier. Turn it around. It's pretty heavy. It weighs about 16 pounds. Small but heavy. In the back, as you can see, speaker output terminals. And these, of course, have been upgraded from the originals. So we'll talk about what's was originally with it and what's changed on it. So since it is vintage, it's pretty old. That's the amplifier. Get rid of those little balls of styrofoam. And the tubes have actually fallen out. I don't know if it's because of shipping or what happened there. They're banged around so badly, and she dropped the tubes out of it. So hopefully they survived. I'm going to get a tool and I'm going to take the cover off. So we're going to look inside. Alright. So I got a screwdriver here, power screwdriver, and I'm going to remove the top cover. I can see the tubes fell out inside there. I think they fell out during shipping, which isn't very good, I don't think. Probably would be better to package it with the tubes separately. Cover. Side. There's the amplifier. Pretty much pretty original condition. That's the output tubes, and apparently they fell out. Hopefully they weren't damaged. Tube back in again. The output tubes. Tubes are pretty bent. Some problems here, for some reason. Back in. Whew. Oh, tube is actually broken. Tube broke on the way. You got a broken tube, part of shipping, I suppose. Somehow got busted. I don't know how that could happen. He must have dropped it or something. So there's it's a problem with buying vintage equipment. Is of course it's going to come the way it comes, and obviously a tube had broke here. I don't know how that would happen. It's tubes have fallen out. I guess the sockets are not very tight, so maybe it's shipping, the way they throw packages around shipping, broke the tube. So I'll have to worry about that after. So basically what you're looking at is a stereo amplifier called the ST-35. And it's called a 35 because it's 17 watts per channel. And this is the left channel, and this is the right channel. That's the driver tube and two output tubes. Maybe two tubes here also. It's an output transformer for the left channel, an output transformer for the right channel, and a power transformer for the amplifier. In the front are the inputs. These are driver boards, output terminals, power cord, and a fuse holder. Cap can, so this is the power caps, fit inside there. And so basically it's 17.5 watts per channel, so it's called a ST-35, so 35 watts total. So 17.5 watts this channel, 17.5 watts this channel. It uses some pretty nice output tubes. And these, I'm having difficulty seeing them because I don't see very well. These are Russian-made tubes, and they're the EL84s, I believe. The 6BQ5 EL84s. A pretty good quality audio tube. Of course, this one's broken, so I'll have to replace that tube. And basically, that's it for the outside of it. For normal, since this is from 1966, it's obviously a vintage amplifier. It's 48 years old. To buy one in original condition is for sure it's probably not going to work. You're going to have to do some work to it in order to get it to work. So this one has had some upgrades to it, which are pretty typical. So it's had the input terminals replaced because originally they were aluminum, and you just want to make good connections. So these have been updated. We took out the original aluminum intake or input terminals and put in with some gold-plated terminals. It's had the output terminals for the speakers upgraded also, 5-way binding posts, so you can put wires or banana plugs into there, and that's been upgraded, and that's a pretty typical upgrade. Still got the original power cord, and it's had some cap upgrades, so you can see these capacitors in the driver boards are all been updated. They don't look very new, they've been around for a while by the looks of things. So sometime along its life, these have been updated and replaced from the originals, and it looks like the resistors have probably been changed. They look newer than they would for original. Looks like original sockets. This is a new upgraded socket, so a ceramic tube socket here in the front for the driver tubes. So it's had some normal upgrades for it, but it's kept the original DynaKit circuit design to keep the sound of the amplifier the way it was when it was original. So we'll open up the bottom, we'll take a look in there. So here it is flipped over on its side, and the transformers are large enough that you can just turn it over and it'll sit on transformers. Doesn't affect the tubes at all. You can see this is the factory bottom, and you can see it is very old and it's very original to its age, right? So it is somewhat faded. There's some things missing. So basically it shows the left speakers. So there's a 16 ohm tap, an 8 ohm tap, and a common tap. So originally there was a screw terminal for the common, and then a screw terminal for 8 ohm, and a screw terminal for 16 ohm. That's been changed to these 5 white grounding posts, and they're just an 8 ohm tap, an 8 ohm tap. So I'll show you that when I open it. The fuse holder is obviously still a fuse holder. It's supposed to have a 2 amp fuse in there. I don't know what's in there now. Let's just take a look. I'm not sure if I can see that. I'll take a look at it after, but that's a fuse holder, and hopefully it just has says fuse 2 amp slow glow, right? Use 1 amp fuse something there. I don't know what that is, but then it shows what the valves are. So it's got valve 1, valve 2, valve 3. So those are 3 tubes. So the driver tube is 7247, and then it's EL84 6BQ5s. And the valves 2 and 3, which are the output tubes. So this is a class A/B amplifier. So it's what they call a push-pull tube amplifier. Right input, left input. It's marked here. So this basically it gives a diagram of the inputs and outputs on the bottom of the amplifier. So it's things you don't see in today's kind of amplifiers. Very vintage, right? In 1966, this is the way they made things. So you can pull the bottom off. And we'll take a look here. And we'll look at some of the upgrades that have been done to make this amplifier still work. Being so old and still work okay. So it's important to see that it's very simple circuitry. It's all point-to-point wiring, so it's all wires, point-to-point wiring, so everything goes together. Basically a small circuit board, driver boards there, but otherwise all the tubes are wired. So we have to be very careful because this can hold high voltages in there. So if you ever open up a tube amplifier, especially here, this is the high voltage circuit area, this can still hold voltage and it can kill you if you touch that, even if it's not plugged in. So I'm not going to touch anything in there with my fingers, even though it's been 10 days in shipping, and who knows how long I'm unplugged since then. But until I test things with a meter, I'm not going to touch anything inside of there. So I'm just going to point out what's changed in here though, so you can see the input terminals have been replaced. So they're nice gold input terminals. Also what's happening is now there's only an 8 ohm tap and a common. So the ground and 8 ohm positive for the speakers. The 16 ohm tap has been moved over to here. So you can see they put a small terminal board, attach it to there, and they wired up the output transformers. Wire to there, so it keeps, instead of being wired up over here, it's wired up over here. So they retain the connection, we just moved it inwards into the tube amplifier. So it's still available for 16 ohm speakers, but it's not available here anymore. So you'd have to go to here. If you want to move it to here, you could, but probably not going to use 16 ohm speakers. I don't think it's going to happen. You can see in the center it says September 23rd, 1966. So it has a date stamp on there. These were sold as, they're called DynaKits. So DynaCode DynaKit ST-35. So they're sold in kit form and they're sold factory wired. This one I'm not sure if it was factory wired or not. I think if it's factory wired it would have a sticker on saying factory wired, but that could be missing over the years. It's hard to say if it's been factory wired or not. Some of these wires may have been replaced since for the upgrades. They may be original to the circuit. So there has been some updates. Having a date inside stamped on the chassis may mean it was factory wired. Either way, if it was sold in a kit form, this board would be completely already made with all the components in it. You just attach the board there, do a point-to-point wiring. You put in all the terminals and all that stuff, the jacks and all that, solder it all in. You solder all the wiring in together, transformers you place in. So that would be the kit. You wouldn't have to fill the boards though, like some kits would. So it's basically assembly of the chassis. It'd be more of the kit. So either way, it's still a good kit anyways. Good amplifier. So the second thing that they've done is they've changed the diodes. So these normally had this is the power circuit, all power circuit. So what they did is they changed the original diodes and they put in these fast diodes. So these 2 diodes have been changed to look like transistors. So those diodes have been changed. So they changed the terminal strip. They put a longer terminal strip in. And they put in diodes that have 2 legs on it instead of just a single, like being series like that. So you change those diodes. So that's been upgraded. They've also, looks like this cap. This is the power capacitor, so smoothing capacitors for the power going into the amplifier. They've actually removed the wires from this terminal. I won't touch it, but removed the wires from this terminal and moved them over to this terminal. They put a single terminal block there and wired everything there, and they put a capacitor in here, replaced that capacitor. This is basically 4 capacitors in that capacitor can you saw on the top right here. That small can, and has 4 different capacitors in there. So I'm thinking the value of that part of the capacitor can was not good anymore, so they replaced it with that value capacitor. So they replaced that and fixed that. They also bridged that lead to there. I'm not sure why they did that, if it's required just to keep it running, or if it was to help the value of this capacitor to maybe this value was a little low and they actually increased it by adding that one that was out of spec. So it did that and those two things. So and basically that's all they did to the circuit to update it. So it's all factory except for that. So they moved the 16 ohm leads here, changed the diodes just to a different style diode, but still the same kind of circuit design. So two different diodes, and then fixed up the cap. The cap didn't measure the spec, and they put in a different capacitor here to make up for that one piece of the can, and change the input jacks. So hopefully this is all going to work. It should work. According to the seller, he said it was in great working condition. It sounds great. So we're going to have to get a tube, replace the tube, and plug it in and test it out and see if it works. And it should work. Just to get back to what the mods have been done already, kind of go over it again. This is the when I said diodes, those are rectifier diodes. So this amplifier, tube amplifiers typically would have had the driver tube. It could have the two output tubes, and we'll have a fifth tube, which would be the rectifier tube. So this amplifier though has a solid state rectifier. So all it is instead of having a tube on the other side to do the rectifying, it had two diodes to do the rectifying. So that's called a solid state diode. The solid state rectifier. So basically it's got those rectifiers and the two resistors here, and that makes the rectification for the AC to DC current. So that's the difference on this amplifier to maybe another amplifier. If you're familiar with tube amplifiers, there's no tube rectifier, it's a solid state rectifier. And just so you know how excited I was about this wonderful little amplifier, is I forgot to mention that it is brought to you by Carling Ice. And typically I would have mentioned the Carling Ice right at the beginning of the People video series videos. And I was so excited about the amplifier, I forgot all about it. So it's brought to you by Carling Ice in the can. Of course not really, they don't sponsor me, but I drink the beer. So, getting back to the amplifier, you put the bottom on. The same 4 screws will hold the top, hold the bottom on. It's got the feet, which might be original feet, might be replacements. But in anticipation, and I was hoping, because I'm going to make a part 2 video for this amplifier, I was going to use it the way I got it first, test it out, make sure it all works, because I still have to hook it up, make sure it works, it doesn't go poof and smoke. With the vintage amplifiers, you take a chance. I had anticipated doing my own changes, so I was going to leave part 2 of this part, but what I did is I ordered my own tubes already. So I have replacement tubes, which is a good thing, since that this tube came out and got broken during shipping. And you can see it's pulled over pretty violently and bent the pins. So I'm not sure how that can even happen. It's pretty nasty. Must have really shot the thing around. It's marked fragile on the box everywhere, so you'd think to be a little more careful. But luckily I'd ordered the tubes in, so these are, let me just get a flashlight and see what those tubes are. So this is a driver tube I got with it, and it's got USSR on it. It's a Westinghouse tube. It's a 6BQ5, and it says 9107, so it might be a date code for it. It's a Westinghouse tube, so it's not probably the greatest output tube. It's a 6BQ5, which is also a EL84 tube. So I know that probably sounds like all Latin to everybody, but EL84 tubes are pretty good quality and well regarded output tubes for both hi-fi amplifiers like this one and for guitar amplifiers. So it's actually a well regarded tube for amplifiers and has a good sound. So luckily I bought new ones. So these are Muller tubes. And these are actually to buy tubes for a tube amplifier. These days, basically what you're going to do is probably buy what they call NOS tubes, so new old stock. So they're brand new tubes, but they were made in the 50s and 60s, and they're still available for purchase because they made so many. They made a whole bunch of tubes, millions of tubes, and then tubes stopped being used, and then they had huge stocks of tubes, and they're still available today. But these are what they call reissue tubes. So Mullard was a tube manufacturer in Britain, one of the major tube manufacturers for the military and for all tube equipment, audio and and band equipment, like so amplifiers and hi-fi amplifiers, and for military equipment and all kinds of things that use tubes in those decades. And Mullard was a British tube manufacturer. They've actually been purchased, I believe, I could be wrong on all this, but I believe they were purchased by an American, and then they were moved to Russia. So Russia was actually very, this tube here is made in Russia. Russian tubes are very high quality tubes, and they make very good tubes. So now this Mullard tube is no longer a British made tube. This is a new issue EL84. You can see that. A new issue EL84 tube. Try to show you the box. EL84. Made by Mullard. But now they're made in Russia. So this is a new old stock. This is a reissue tube. So this is a recently manufactured tube. I'm not sure when. I'm guessing not that long ago. So this is actually a new issue tube. And I'm not sure if you can see all that. I'll try to get in the camera. Be able to read the lettering. I'll try to read it to you in case you can't. It says Mullard EL84 made in Russia, and then 1403. So I'm thinking that's a date code. So it was made in March 2014. And it's a reissue tube. Made to, I believe, to Mullard standards, made in Russia. And the quality control there is really actually pretty good to make really good tubes. So since I got a broken tube, I'm going to change all the tubes. So that's a driver tube. Then I bought some electro harmonics. We'll see what's in this one, and they're called 12DW7. You can see it's 7247. So basically those are numbers, they're cross-referenced. The 7247, 12DW7 is basically the same tube. This is made by Electro Harmonics, and this is, I believe, another Russian tube. The Russians really know how to make tube electronics. They're leaders in their field. And yeah, it's made in Russia, so I'll try to hold that if you see that or not. Read that. I think you can see it. So this one says 12DW7EH, actual electro harmonics made in Russia 1001. So this, I believe, is still a tube that's made today. It's not a new old stock tube either. So it's a newer tube. It's not the old tubes from the 50s and 60s. Now, buying tubes from the 50s and 60s is probably preferred by purists. They would like to have the new old stock tubes because they're tubes that were made in the era these amplifiers were designed. So we'll flip this over and we'll do a tube change. And see how it looks after. And just to show the driver tubes, I just pulled one out. I'm not sure, it just says 12DW7. So same as this number on here, and it just says EI, so I'm not sure what EI is. I'll have to look that up. I'll show you the face on that. Read that. EI, so these are driver tubes. They're probably fine, I'm sure they're fine. And to remove tubes, if anybody's interested, you could basically just kind of rock it around in a circle and pull up at the same time, and they kind of wiggle their way out. So these tubes are like fairly new. They don't look very old. They're kind of not dusty, so they may be recent replacements. I'm sure all these tubes have been replaced from some time. I'm not sure about these, if they're new old stock driver tubes or where they are. It looks like they're from the date might be 07, so they might be from 2007. And that's a date code. I'm pretty sure there probably is. So these are probably not new old stock. These are probably reissues, similar to what I bought. But also something to think about is the output tubes which go here. So these are driver tubes, these are the output tubes. You have to be a match set, because basically you want all four tubes to kind of have the same kind of output, so that when you're putting to the speakers are balanced and you get the right imaging and everything. So these are actually a quad set. If you look, I bought them as a quad set. So basically what that means is I purchased a match set, and not just two of them, I purchased four. Let me close this, I'm roughing their tube out. So I purchased 4 tubes from the same place, which was I believe the tubedepot.com or tubes, I'm not sure where I bought it from. But anyway, so you can see the ends. So they've been tested and they have a 50. So all four of them say 50 there. So I think that's the voltage for the plate. I'm not sure, but it shows a current. So all of them basically have this, they put out the same amount. So they matched all four of them so that when I have my output tubes are basically outputting the same amount of power. So I can left and right channels sound the same. One isn't louder than the other. Sometimes you can match tubes. They actually give you a couple specifications, so they show you the IP and something else. So, but here they just show those showing that they're all 50s, so that make a quad set and they're matched. So I'll put those tubes in. So there we go. I got all the tubes. So 2 driver tubes have been replaced, and 4 output tubes have been replaced. So from what I can tell by looking underneath, I'll do a closer examination though, but everything looks like it's good condition. They claim it was in working condition. It sounded great when I bought it. So the updated components, it looks like these updates though are not new updates. These are probably done, these updates may have been done years ago, I'm not sure, but they certainly have been done. These caps are not original to these driver boards, and it looks like the resistors have probably been replaced also. So these caps are probably still good. I may check them over time just to check out the boards. Now I'm going to do a part 2, so I have some upgrades I want to do to this too, but first I'm going to plug it in, see if it all works, and try it out a little bit first, and then I was hoping to do part 2 and replace the tubes and the other upgrades I have for it all at one time, but because I had a broken driver tube or output tube, I had to replace all the tubes now. I figured I'll just replace the tubes now. So I got brand new tubes in it, and we'll give it a try, and I'll do a part 2 of the, once I use it for a few days, I'll do part 2. I gotta wait for stuff to come in the mail anyways. It should be in by Friday, I think. And I get my other components in, and I'll do my upgrades on this, and we'll take a look at it again, and I'll do the upgrades that I plan on doing, and I'll have a little bit of commentary on how I think it sounds and how it works. Hopefully when I plug it in, it doesn't go poof and smoke all over the place. It's a nice old amp. Just to go over a little bit of the history of this amp, this is a DynaKit. So it's a DynaKit ST-35. So basically it was a Dyna company. Originally I believe they started, this looks like it's not soldered. They started out as a transformer manufacturer. So they're making transformers for the auto industry and so forth for tube amplifiers. Then they turned into DynaKit company, so it was Dyna company, and then they changed their name to DynaKit, and they started making amplifiers called DynaKits. So they had DynaKit 35, ST-35, ST-70, which is the big brother of this one. Instead of being 35 watts, it was 70 watts, so 35 watts per channel. This one's 17.5 per channel. And they made the MK2, I believe, and the MK3 monoblock amplifiers. And actually, this amplifier is pretty legendary in the amplifier world. For that era, it was a very good quality amplifier. These transformers are actually well sought after. The original transformers, you can see it says PA774 on the front of it. So that's the power transformer. And if you can see on this side, it says Z565 on the side of that transformer. I don't know if you can see that in the image. Somewhere in there behind the tube. But these transformers are highly regarded in the hi-fi amplifier for output transformers. They're really high quality transformers. They're hand wound in the United States, and these original transformers have a lot of value for the vintage collectors, and this amplifier was actually a very good quality amplifier. On part 2, when I do the upgrades, I'll go over the specifications of the amplifier from the factory, and when I get more familiar with the components that are in there, we can maybe see how it might have changed the sound of it. It's been kept to original circuit design, so there hasn't been major circuit design changes. You can buy boards for bias adjustments and stuff like that. So other than that, this is the cap, the can cap. This is the one. So the only modification really to the circuit was the diodes. So the solid state rectifier got new diodes, in one section of this can, which has 4 sections in it for capacitors, one section has been replaced with an external capacitor, and these caps on the top have been changed in resistors. So it's been updated sometime in its life, which is to be expected since it's 48 years old. And but this has been the DynaKit company. Their DynaKits, either factory wired or put together by a kit. People buy the kit and put the wire themselves. It was a well-regarded amplifier, hi-fi amplifier, and it was actually, if anybody's familiar with Macintosh amplifiers, these were called a poor man's Macintosh. So actually they were affordable tube amplifier, stereo amplifier, and it has the good quality components and very good sound quality that a Macintosh might have for that period of time. And Macintoshes were the most regarded basically out there, and so, but much more expensive, so they call this poor man's Macintosh. So if you couldn't afford the Macintosh, you'd buy a DynaKit, and you get really good quality sound, really good quality components, and a very good circuit design for your amplifier without having to spend all that money. Okay, so that's about it. I'm going to hook it up. Hopefully it doesn't smoke. And I'll be back with part 2 in a few days or a week or so when I get all my parts, and I'll show you what the upgrades are going to be, and maybe I'll show you how I'm going to do those upgrades, and we'll get her up to snuff, and hopefully I'll get another 48 years of use on this amplifier.